really takes a lot of self-awareness of teachers to be able to really listen to what is being said and really understanding, reading between the lines and really seeing the values that families hold and what's most important to them, and then transferring that knowledge into I guess a sense of sensitivity in how they use that knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and how they talk with the child at school about their traditions, how they
Mm-hmm.
bring that into the school environment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share some examples of how teachers have taken that knowledge and really, you shared some examples before of the family of Red and bringing
Mm-hmm.
those books, the Indigenous books, into the
Mm-hmm.
library and sharing different aspects of culture. Can you share some other examples of how teachers have approached gaining that knowledge and really utilising it in their everyday teaching practice, and how they actually interact with that family after the home visit?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's just something very small that they will have learned during the home visit. I'm thinking about Janique. She is a pre-K teacher, and she was meeting with a mom of a special needs child entering the school system for the first time, a fairly high needs special needs student. And so, of course, the mom had all kinds of worries and things. And one of the things she said is sometimes she just melts down. She just loses it and she cries. And so they were talking about it. And Janique had said to her, so what do you do when that happens? So you've had experience with this. What advice do you have for me? And the mom sort of giggled and said, well, what we've learned works is we just start singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. We don't do anything, we just sing, and she soothes and she just joins back into things again. So early in the school year, Janique's got kids in the circle, they're on the carpet, and this little one, something happened and set her off, and she went into this state. And so Janique thought, okay, here we go. So she sang Twinkle, Twinkle. And the little girl was just, it was that soothing that she needed, and just that response that Janique knew that too. And as the school year unfolded, the kids just picked up on it. Nothing was said, but they knew when this little one was struggling that the thing to do was to sing. And Janique said there were times the whole class would just sing.
Oh,
And
how beautiful.
isn't that beautiful? How would you know, Rachel? How
Yeah.
would you as a teacher ever know what to do? How many days, weeks, etc. would you be working to solve that issue? And
And
it
getting
didn't,
more and more stressed over trying to figure it out on your own.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's just a little example. Um, Kirsten, I'll use that example a lot. She's just amazing with parent engagement. She begins her year in grade 1 with she uses lots of big ideas and inquiry kinds of processes in her classroom. And that's a beautiful way to give parents lots of room to share knowledge. And so she often starts her year with a big idea that math lives everywhere. And so she asks the kids to think about, where does math live in their home and where does math live in their culture? And she talks to families about it as well. And so, and she knows things from having been in their homes. That beautiful tablecloth, that's a math pattern. And so, I mean, she has that insight of all of those things. And so families start bringing things in, sending things in, coming in to teach games from their own culture. The parents just naturally begin to feed into the curriculum making that's happening in the classroom, because it's an authentic and meaningful way for them to engage, to look for patterns in their clothing, to look for, numeracy, or, addition or subtraction, or, those kinds of problem-solving games and so on. And so some teachers have it enter in those very big ways, just by always asking families. In Kirsten's room, whenever they begin a new inquiry, she always says, well, we need to ask our experts. So when we're thinking about this big idea and we're gathering ideas and we're thinking about, we have to ask our experts. So please go home and ask your family experts for ideas and so on. And so it just becomes natural for that to happen. Other teachers are doing some beautiful things to start the school year at various times during the year. Family evenings, family gatherings, that kind of thing. We've done things where we've asked, maybe we've introduced a storybook like The Memory Box by Mary Barr, or I always use Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge when I speak in Australia because Mem Fox wrote that beautiful book. And those stories set up the opportunity for families to gather artifacts that say who they are. And it'll be done. It's being done virtually differently now because it's in breakout rooms on Zoom or something. But when we were together, families would gather at a table, maybe 3 families sitting together at this table, 3 families at that one, and they'd share their artifacts and tell who they are and where they come from, things that are important to them. So not only is the teacher hearing and gaining knowledge of the families, but families are gaining knowledge of one another, creating a greater web and more interconnections and more support for one another as well. So lots of those kinds of things. Christy, we have a beautiful book here in the prairies. It's called If You're Not From the Prairies. So it's a very Western Canadian book written by a Métis author, and it says, if you're not from the prairies, you don't know the wind, you can't know the wind, the wind that howls and, all that kind of thing. And so Christy does a beautiful project with her families. If you're not from my family, you can't know our laughter. You just won't know our laughter. Those kinds of things. And so the family stories provide insight into parent knowledge, but they also become curriculum in and of themselves for the kids and the families in the classroom, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful example of a teacher really thinking about how she plans her curriculum and pedagogy in terms of how she delivers it. And I love the way she engages the students to talk with their parents. And I think that's another missing piece in some ways with parent engagement, where we don't need to necessarily rely on just teachers talking with parents. It's about helping students or the children understand that their parents are valued and that they're valued partners in the learning, and that they have expertise that they can share with their children. And sometimes it takes the initiative from teachers to actually explore questions they can ask their parents for them to open up and talk and tell stories to their children about their own lives and their history. And I know a lot of assignments that come home from school are around interviewing a family member to find out what their history is, or ultimately it comes back to storytelling, doesn't it? And
so much of it. Brett Rowland is a high school department head, a high school English teacher here just in a city outside of Saskatoon where I live. And I just think it's brilliant what he's done, because he has parents engaged in his high school English curriculum, which most teachers would tell you that's impossible, right? But Brett, instead of having students in his classes in grade 10 or 11 or 12 do novel studies, he's having parent teen book clubs with the kids. So he shows them the 5 novels, that are aligned to the curriculum. These are novel choices. He makes sure there's choices in there that reflect or mirror the families in his community, so people could see themselves perhaps in one of those pieces of work. He sends information home with the kids and to their parents that says, here are the choices, invites them to choose a novel together. And then their first, he calls them check-ins. Their first check-in is they each say why they picked that book. And so the reason the father chose the book might be a different reason than the daughter chose the book. But they just sit like we are, a little video, and they record their conversation and they shoot that in to Brett. Why did we choose this book? What does it mean to me? Why am I interested in this? And then they plan a schedule. How are we going to read? Are we going to read together, separately? Are we going to check in every day, once a week? They get to plan all of that. And then he has these wonderful assignments. So that it's really very much the parents and students experience. Brett's way out of it, right? He isn't in the midst of it at all. So things like each independently choose a passage in the book that speaks to your family's values. So find something that you think resonates. That's what we believe as a family too. And maybe find something that doesn't, that challenges your values, and then get together and talk about that. And it's amazing to hear the parents and their kids talk about what happens in those moments. I was talking to a mom and her son one evening, and she said they picked her son. They decided to pick A Brave New World, and she said there's some things in there that are quite mature, some things that we hadn't yet been talking about, moral choices around sexuality and different things. And she said it was such a wonderful opportunity to have that conversation arise naturally. And for me to have the opportunity to sit with my son and say, we believe these things because, we do have strong religious values, and here's why. And here's what we're hoping will happen for you and your siblings with this. And then the son saying to me, I'm not so resistant about some of my family's rules anymore. I understand where they're coming from, and I get it. And I want to live that way in the world too. I want to be a certain kind of person. And so I'm not feeling anymore that it's just a rule. I understand more about my mom and dad's choices. Really cool things like that happened in that exchange. Another one that I love, Brett gave them the opportunity to choose a metaphor, a theme, something in the book that just spoke to them. And then they could work with it as a family in any way they wanted, artistically and writing and music, whatever worked for them. He said, if you're storytellers and you're oral, just video something, whatever. And he shared one piece with me one day. It came in and he said, I've got to send this to you. And the family also, I think, was reading Brave New World, and we're talking about the sense of being who you want to be, not giving into the pressures and things. So they chose the song, I Love You Just the Way You Are. And the son played the song on the piano, the student in Brett's class. The dad played, it's a cultural drum. I'm not sure, Django maybe it was called. And the mom sang. And they recorded this beautiful piece. Here they have this teenager, and they're creating this piece of music and filming it to send to their teacher. I just was so moved when I saw it, and I just think that is a memory that will never be forgotten. That will be a moment that will never be forgotten. And then just by coincidence, I was teaching classes this summer, and I was talking about Brett's work. And a teacher in the class said, I need to turn my mic on. And she said, Debbie, my son has been in Brett's class. I've been a parent on the receiving end of the parent-student book club. And she said, it's changed my relationship with my son in such dramatic ways. And she spoke about it really emotionally. And then in our class, we were doing book clubs. And her son was saying to her, oh, Mom, what are you reading? I've read that book too. And she said that this is now family culture, home culture, this sharing books, talking about books. It's just become what they do now. And it wasn't something they were doing before. So that power of parent-child, yes, Rachel, you're so right about that. And it doesn't always have to have the teacher in the middle or at the center, I think.
And what an amazing opportunity to be able to spend time with your child and truly engage in their learning. I would have loved that opportunity with my kids
Mm-hmm.
in secondary school, because I often tried to read the books that they were reading
Sure,
and
me
to
too. Yeah.
engage in conversations with them about it. But there was often some resistance, as there
Mm-hmm.
is with teenagers. But
Mm-hmm.
having the opportunity that's initiated by the teacher, where it is part of what they need to do,
Mm-hmm.
such a great opportunity to share and to understand the family values as well.